God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, for you are our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. This is the passage in the New Testament that we get the phrase, many are called but few are chosen. We hear that phrase all the time. Sometimes the Methodist Church has been said, many are cold but few are frozen. We want to warm up. We want to be a place of warmth and vitality, not cold and cool to people. Many are called, but few are chosen. Jesus loved to tell parables. He loved to tell stories. And the thing about stories is that you can put multiple meanings on them, and as you listen to the stories, different people place themselves in the stories differently. It's a kind of a wild story when you really hear all of the details of it. It's about a king that threw a big party, but nobody came. The party was a flop. He sent out the engraved invitations. I'm giving a big wedding party for my son. Nobody came. This was a king. So it wasn't just that people had other things to do. They were trying to embarrass the king. They didn't like him. He had done something that they didn't like. He was embarrassed. So he sent out his slaves again. Come to the party. Everything is ready. The food is cooked. You know how it is when you've got everything ready and you want somebody to come. You don't want it to go to waste. I did a wedding one time in Cedar Grove. It was in the middle of the hot summertime. And it was a fancy wedding, and the gal who was getting married hired the hairdresser who had done all of the girls' hair at the Miss North Carolina pageant. She had them down in the basement doing their hair. The wedding was supposed to be at 2 o'clock, and then it got to be 2:15 and 2:30 and 2:45. They were still doing their hair downstairs. Finally, about 3, they came up, and they were all beautiful, and we did the wedding, and then we went to the big fancy reception, which was outside. And by the time we got there, the wedding cake had melted. Come on, the cake is melting. We got to do it now. There's a sense of urgency. Still, they did not come. And so finally the king sends out his servants into the highways and byways, and they round up everybody that they can. The poor, those who never get invited to big fancy banquets. Wonderful line in there said both the good and the bad. Didn't care about their character. The food is ready, come on into the banquet. Then there's a little final twist on the parable there. Some scholars think this was actually 2 parables about wedding feasts that got put together thematically. The king comes in and he sees one of the people there, and he doesn't have on his fancy wedding garments. Now, at that time in history, if you were having a really, really, really big party and wanted to spend a lot of money, you would give these special clothes and wraps to people as they came in. And so this person had come in, and they'd been given the special clothes, and they didn't even care to put them on. The king gets furious and says, throw him in the outer darkness. For many are called, but few are chosen. Now, when the priests and the Pharisees heard this parable, it made them mad. Because when they heard the parable, they heard that they were the invited guests that hadn't come. God had sent invitations to the Hebrew people over and over during the years. He had sent Moses, he had sent Elijah, he had sent the 10 Commandments, he had sent the prophets. Over and over again, he had invited the Hebrews, the Jewish people, to come and be a part of the great banquet, the great kingdom of heaven. But they had resisted. Especially the leaders. The Pharisees and the Sadducees, the people who were supposed to have everybody's concern as their first choice. So they had rejected the invitation. When the Pharisees and Sadducees heard that, it made them mad. As a matter of fact, they started plotting to kill Jesus after they heard this parable. The common people, the people who never got invited to fancy things, the poor people, the people who just had barely enough faith to go to the synagogue on Sunday, the Gentiles, the lepers, the people who were left out. What do you think when they heard this parable? This is great. The king has now invited us, the people left out by society, to come and be a part of the great banquet, the great wedding feast. The king is offering his son. God is offering Jesus. He is celebrating him in the midst of the world. It's a happy invitation. And finally, like I said, the little twist about the fellow who didn't wear the wedding garment. If God issues us an invitation and we respond, the best thing to do is try to put on our best behavior. The best thing to do is to respect that invitation. The best thing to do is not to treat it as just one more thing in life. So the king tosses him out. He doesn't kill him. He just tosses him outside into the cold. He doesn't get a part of the banquet. This section of Matthew 24 begins a whole part of the New Testament when Jesus is pretty hard on the scribes and the Pharisees. He calls them blind guides. He says that they put heavy burdens on others but light burdens on themselves. He's saying our leaders are not taking us where we need to go. That sound familiar? So we're going to break down the doors of exclusivity and we're going to welcome in all who would come. And we're not even going to prejudge them. Bring them in good and bad. If they're good, praise God, we'll love them. If they're bad, we'll fix them up. Three great elements of this story. First of all, it stresses that it's all about an invitation. It's an invitation. You ever got a really, really fancy invitation, gold embossed and, flowers on it and ribbons tying it and all that kind of stuff? It makes you feel like this is something really big. Jesus issues an invitation to everyone. You're not forced to come and be a part of his movement. It makes us unique in the world. We invite people into the Christian movement. And when we do, some respond and some don't. God gives people free will. There are a lot of people who are nominal Christians who say, yeah, I believe, but do they really commit themselves? Recent statistics says that about 40% of Americans attend church regularly. That's really not too bad. A lot of places in the world where it's much less than that, especially Europe. About 40% of Americans attend church on a regular basis. But only 9% of our society says that religious life is their most important priority. They say other things are important: family, friends, career, retirement. 9%, right at a tithe, right at 10%, say that their faith and their religious commitment is the most important thing in their life.